You didn't arrive at this message by coincidence. This message sought you out, quietly, deliberately, because you're standing at a threshold few notice. What's about to unfold isn't just another explanation or theory. It's a transmission, a remembrance, a call from something older than memory. It speaks of an ancient text, elusive and potent, that's traveled through centuries cloaked in metaphor and mystery. That text, often overlooked or misunderstood, is a spiritual cipher whispered through the ages, the Kybalion. Not a typical book, not even a manual. It's more like a map drawn in stardust and silence, revealing the invisible architecture of existence. But it only reveals itself to those who are inwardly poised to see. To the rational mind, that notion may sound bizarre, even fanciful. Yet history is filled with strange awakenings, moments when knowledge arrives not because one searched, but because one shifted. A whisper in the soul, not the brain, opens the door. This isn't something you'll find on the shelves of a university or taught in the curricula of standard learning. No, this wisdom was protected, passed in secrecy from soul to soul, not because it was elitist, but because it was sacred. It required readiness, not intellect. It responded to depth, not curiosity. And if these words are reaching your awareness now, it's not due to randomness. It's because an inner signal was sent, and the universe replied. Long before modern civilization gave names to gods and deities, before language was shaped into dogma, there was one who came bearing truths encoded in stars and breath. He was known as Hermes Trismegistus, thrice great, master of knowledge, of power, and of divine communion. But he wasn't a mere mortal scribe. He was a synthesis, a symbolic fusion of two colossal figures from ancient lore: Thoth, the Egyptian embodiment of higher wisdom, and Hermes, the Greek conveyor of divine messages. Together they didn't just speak about spirit, they symbolized the bridge between seen and unseen, between thought and form, between man and cosmos. Imagine this. While most of the ancient world battled famine, war, or ritual superstition, a different gathering took place in temples not open to the public. In those sacred chambers, hidden by desert sands or shadowed corridors, initiates were not instructed through lectures or scrolls. They experienced reality through vibration, through resonance. Every glyph, each gesture, carried significance that pierced deeper than logic. These teachings didn't just inform, they transformed. Initiates studied the spirals of time, the mathematics of the soul, the symphony of sacred geometry, and the way energy shapes destiny. And more than anything, they learned that the truest sanctuary was not made of stone but consciousness. This knowledge, though profound, was not widely shared. It was sealed behind the veil of symbolism and abstraction to guard against misuse. Just as one would not hand a volatile chemical to an untrained novice, this kind of sacred intelligence required discernment. The term hermetic did not emerge by accident. It described a system closed to those who were not inwardly aligned, not out of arrogance, but reverence. This guardedness wasn't to exclude, it was to protect the teachings from being corrupted by ego, or worse, used to control or deceive. Hermes didn't leave behind shallow advice or religious mandates. He authored works of immense spiritual density. Though most were lost in fires and destruction, like the catastrophic burning of the Library of Alexandria, some of the essence survived. One such distillation, released centuries later, arrived in the early 1900s. It was compact, mysterious, and encoded. Authored not by a single person but by a trio known only as the Three Initiates, it reawakened principles long dormant, bridging ancient understanding with modern minds. That book was called the Kybalion, and though brief, it holds the vibrations of forgotten temples and buried chants. This is not a book one skims for inspiration. It's a mirror, clear to the open, silent to the unready. Its power doesn't lie in its words alone, but in the awakening they stir. Those sentences carry weight, like keys unlocking invisible doors. When you read it with the heart alert, the soul attentive, something deep stirs. You don't merely read it. You are read by it. The Kybalion doesn't try to impress or entertain. It aims to shift your lens, to alter how you register reality itself. One of its most resonant truths is whispered gently. The lips of wisdom are closed, except to the ears of understanding. A sentence, simple in form but seismic in meaning. The idea is that illumination isn't granted by effort alone. It emerges when your inner state aligns. Like trying to appreciate the subtle beauty of a violin while deaf, one must first tune their inner ear to resonance. Wisdom waits for you to become the kind of receiver who can register its frequency. That's why many pass it by. They're looking with their eyes, not seeing with their essence. That's also why you're here. You may not remember asking, but your soul did. It reached out in some quiet ache, some unanswered question, some invisible yearning. And this knowledge came, not to impress you, but to ignite you. The hermetic path isn't flashy. It's not about acquiring power. It's about aligning with truth so deeply that power becomes irrelevant. And once you recognize that the outer world arises from inner vibration, your entire orientation to life begins to shift. Everything begins in the unseen. What we touch, what we build, what we destroy, all begins in thought. The hermetic law of mentalism reveals this as the first and root principle. Everything that exists once lived first as a concept. The cosmos itself was born as intention within an infinite intelligence. This universe, in all its complexity, is not a random byproduct of particles clashing. It is an expression of consciousness. Everything is mind. The material world is not primary. It is the echo of thought, not the source. To understand this is to wake up from a long dream. It's to realize you are not a random spark adrift in chaos. You are a co-creator, a conscious participant in an unfolding story written from mind into matter. You are dreaming and being dreamt, sculpting and being sculpted, breathing and being breathed by something far larger, and yet deeply intimate. You are not outside of this intelligence. You are an extension of it. And once this lands, even slightly, the fear begins to dissolve. Because what is there to fear if you are not separate? This cosmic mind, the all, as Hermeticism refers to it, is not a distant deity sitting in judgment. It is an ever-present field of intelligence. The Hindus named it Brahman. The Gnostics called it the fullness. The quantum physicists now speak of a unified field. Language differs, but the essence remains. We are swimming in awareness, living within living mind. Just as your nighttime dreams are shaped by your own subconscious, this waking reality is shaped by a collective divine dream. And that means, just like dreams, it responds to thought, to belief, to emotion. Consider for a moment your own life. Look not at the events themselves, but at the beliefs that preceded them. How many limitations were inherited and never questioned? How often has scarcity, doubt, or abandonment colored the palette of your experience? Not because life is cruel, but because the mind projected those frequencies into the field, and the field, being impartial, echoed them back. If you've believed that trust is dangerous, then betrayal seemed to repeat. If you've believed that abundance is for others, then struggle became a pattern. This is not blame, it is awareness. Because what can be seen can be shifted. The same field that mirrored fear can mirror faith. The same frequency that attracted chaos can summon coherence. But the shift doesn't begin outside. It begins in the architecture of the mind. That's why the hermetic path isn't about moral perfection or worldly success. It's about mastery of your vibration. To change what manifests, you must first become aware of what you're emanating. And this isn't about forced positivity or suppressing pain. That's misunderstanding the depth of the teaching. This is about recognition. When you observe your thoughts as energy, you begin to see their weight, their movement, their consequence. They aren't just passing ideas, they are instructions to the fabric of existence. Each one sends a message, and that message becomes form. The power of this realization is liberating but also sobering, because it means responsibility. No longer can you blame the world without looking at the signals you're transmitting. It means every reaction, every fixation, every judgment becomes an ingredient in your personal frequency. And the world, like a wise mirror, reflects it back with precision. Not to punish, but to awaken. There's more to unfold, far more. This is just the beginning. In the next part, we will explore how these invisible laws, these ancient threads, bind together everything you've ever known, and how they can be used not just to understand reality, but to dance with it in ways few have ever dared. Stay with me. Imagine for a moment that everything you've ever felt, thought, or believed isn't locked away in your memory or buried deep in your psychology, but is actually pulsing outward like a beacon. These internal currents, even the unconscious ones, don't just remain contained inside your being. They vibrate constantly, endlessly into the very fabric of existence. And existence listens. Not passively, not occasionally, but always. It hears in frequencies, not in words. It responds not to your spoken desires, but to your dominant state of vibration. This idea, simple as it may appear, is one of the most profound truths that the ancient hermetic initiates understood. The universe operates not on randomness, but on resonance. What you're living right now, the life unfolding before your eyes, is not some unplanned accident. It's the playback of what's been encoded in your frequency. Just as a song begins to play, the moment the needle hits the grooves of a record, your external experiences begin playing the moment your internal patterns are etched deep enough to become dominant signals. If you've ever wondered why certain themes repeat in your life, similar relationships, recurring struggles, predictable emotional crashes, it's not because life is cruel or unfair. It's because the broadcast hasn't changed. The vibration remains the same. The melody may shift its lyrics, but the tune is familiar. This is where the hermetic law of cause and effect comes into view like a blazing lantern in a dark corridor. It doesn't whisper in riddles. It states bluntly that nothing occurs without a cause, and every cause has its mirror in the effects it unleashes. This isn't punishment. It isn't reward. It is simply how the universe stays coherent. Every emotion, every intention, every word is like a pebble tossed into an endless body of water, sending ripples outward. Most people think they're merely reacting to what the world throws at them, never realizing that many of those waves they're navigating were originally stirred by their own energy long ago. This understanding is both confronting and liberating. Confronting because it means you must turn inward and trace the roots of your own experiences. Liberating because it means you have the power to plant something new. The soil of existence does not discriminate. It will grow whatever seed you place within it. Fear will grow more fear. Faith will grow more grace. And the key lies not in manipulating the outer world, but in tending to the inner one. Let's look deeper. Suppose someone habitually complains. Perhaps they grumble about their circumstances, about people, about how nothing ever goes right. That expression is more than just words. It is a signal, a tone vibrating through the ethers. That tone harmonizes with other frequencies that match it. Delayed opportunities, tense interactions, blocks. And then the individual, not knowing the law, assumes they are simply unlucky. But in truth, They are living in alignment with the energy they have been transmitting, often for years. That alignment might be unconscious, but it is still precise. The law doesn't care about your awareness. It only cares about your energy. To shift this pattern is not about willpower alone, it's about awareness, about becoming conscious of the hidden thoughts, the inherited beliefs, the subtle stories playing beneath the surface. It's about seeing where your focus goes and what emotion powers it. Every day, whether you know it or not, you're either reinforcing an old script or writing a new one. The former keeps you locked in cycles. The latter begins to carve out new timelines, new potentials, new roads you didn't know existed. And yet, even as we grasp this, many feel frustrated by moments of backsliding. Just when they begin to awaken, to raise their state, to emit a different frequency, life seems to throw a challenge at them. The joy fades, old fears return, confidence collapses. But this isn't failure. This is the swing of the great pendulum. Here the hermetic law of rhythm reveals itself as a silent force moving everything in patterns, expansion followed by contraction, movement followed by stillness. Nothing remains static. Just as the moon waxes and wanes, just as oceans surge and recede, your inner world also breathes in cycles. And it's not something to fear, it is something to understand, to observe. If you resist it, you suffer. If you learn to move with it, you surf the wave rather than being drowned beneath it. You've felt this rhythm before. Those days when inspiration floods your heart and synchronicity follows you like a loyal companion. And then, almost without warning, a fog rolls in. Doubt creeps up. Old emotions resurface, and you think, I've lost my progress. But in truth, you haven't regressed. You're spiraling upward. You're being called to revisit a layer, to integrate it more deeply, to bring light to a shadow that once went unnoticed. The great mystics and sages knew this dance well. They saw that evolution is not a straight ascent, but a spiral. You return to familiar places, not to be punished, but to see them with new eyes. To bring the fire of awareness to spaces that once held fear. And each time you return as someone slightly more awake. Someone more capable of transmuting pain into insight, grief into compassion, silence into wisdom. This leads to another sacred principle that shaped the foundation of hermetic understanding: polarity. All things contain their opposite. Heat and cold, joy and sorrow, light and darkness. They are not enemies. They are degrees of the same essence. There is no line dividing them, only a continuum. This understanding brings freedom because it means you are never trapped in a fixed state. If you are angry, you are not broken. You are simply situated on the low end of the courage spectrum. If you feel fear, you are not weak. You are merely standing on the far edge of the trust scale. By shifting your perception, even slightly, you begin to move along the pole. You don't need to destroy fear to feel faith. You don't need to erase sadness to feel peace. You need only to adjust your position along the scale, just like you would tune the dial on a radio. What was once discord becomes melody. What was once a block becomes a bridge. This is the quiet art of transmutation, the invisible alchemy practiced by those who have stopped reacting and started observing. They no longer ask the world to change first. They become the shift. And this brings us to vibration, the underlying heartbeat of all things. Everything moves. Even the solid rock vibrates at a molecular level. Every structure, every organism, every thought, every emotion, none of it is still. Life is not defined by form, but by frequency. And the higher the vibration, the more subtle, the more expansive, the more creative the field becomes. That is why some places feel heavy and dense, while others feel light and expansive. It's why some people seem to drain you, while others seem to lift you without a word. It's not magic, it's resonance. Your frequency is shaped not by a single event, but by your consistent choices, the thoughts you entertain, the feelings you nurture, the foods you consume, the words you speak, the environments you place yourself in. Each of these things adds a note to your symphony, and the world listens. Raising your vibration isn't about perfection. It's not about floating away into blissful ignorance. It's about choosing, moment by moment, to bring more awareness, more intention, more presence into your inner world. A single breath, taken consciously, shifts the field. A single act of compassion, directed inward, begins to restructure the frequency. You don't need rituals. You don't need affirmations plastered on your walls. You need sincerity. You need the willingness to become intimate with your own energy. And here's the marvel of it. The moment you begin to vibrate differently, the entire matrix of your life starts to reorder. Situations that no longer match your new frequency dissolve. People who once felt familiar may fall away. New opportunities begin to trickle in, not because you chase them, but because you magnetize them. This is not philosophy. It's physics. You've probably experienced this already without knowing. A day when you woke up joyful, grateful, centered, and everything seemed to click. The timing, the conversations, the energy, it all aligned. That wasn't random. That was alignment made visible. Conversely, on a day filled with irritation and negative self-talk, everything seemed to resist. The traffic, the attitudes, the unexpected delays, that too was resonance, not punishment, just reflection. This is why the initiate doesn't seek control over outer events. They seek mastery of the inner state, because they know that what is inwardly stable creates outer coherence. They become aware of the subtle shifts in their own field. They learn to tune themselves before attempting to orchestrate the world. What we're talking about isn't superstition or esotericism dressed in mystique. It's ancient science. It's the spiritual physics of consciousness. And you don't need to believe in it for it to work. Just like gravity doesn't wait for your faith, these laws continue operating whether you observe them or not. But once you do become aware, once you recognize that every moment is a conversation with the All, your life begins to take on a different texture. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start wondering, "What signal did I send?" And here's the most empowering truth of all. If you don't like the reflection you're seeing, you can shift it. Not by wishing it away, but by shifting what you emanate. You're not a passive participant. You're not a spectator. You are a broadcaster, a projector, a co-creator standing at the center of a vibrational web that responds to your every pulse. So what happens when you truly begin to live this way? When you wake up and align with intention, when you move through your day aware of your vibration, when you let your emotions become portals instead of prisons, the answer is transformation. Not in the way society defines it, but in the way spirit understands it. Not loud, not dramatic, but quiet, stable, clear. You begin to trust the rhythm, to read the symbols, to hear the music behind the noise. And as you do, the world no longer feels like a battlefield. It becomes a mirror. Not a mirror of judgment, but of feedback. A sacred response to who you are becoming. That's the hidden gift behind every law of the Kybalion, not control, not power, but liberation. The freedom to know yourself as the instrument, the song, and the player all at once. By now, the landscape of your inner world might be beginning to shift. Perhaps you're sensing that life isn't quite what it once appeared to be, that the path you walk isn't straight or linear, but fluid, molded as much by your energy as by your decisions. That revelation, while profound, is only part of the picture. The Hermetic teachings didn't stop with the awareness of rhythm, polarity, and vibration. They went further. They urged initiates not just to recognize these movements, but to live in harmony with them, to become so attuned that their very presence would ripple transformation outward. That brings us to the principle that holds every pattern together, the law of correspondence. This law is not as abstract as it might seem. In fact, it's all around you, embedded in the very nature of reality. It is the unseen code that ties the micro to the macro, the part to the whole. The Kybalion states it simply: as above, so below; as within, so without. That's more than poetic symmetry. It is the core recognition that your internal state is constantly mirrored by your external experience. If you want to know what's happening inside someone, look at the quality of their environment. If you want to understand a nation's spiritual state, observe how it treats its weakest members. Everything reflects everything else. We weren't taught this, of course. Most people live in the illusion of separation. They believe their inner thoughts are private, sealed off from the world. But energy doesn't work that way. Thoughts, beliefs, emotions, they're not just ideas trapped behind your forehead. They're frequencies, patterns, vibrations moving through the matrix. And what's inside inevitably leaks outward, shaping events, molding relationships, sculpting reality to match the interior climate. Take a moment and examine your outer world. The people you attract, the places you frequent, the situations that repeat. Are they harmonious, chaotic, nourishing, draining? Each one is an echo, a subtle reflection of what's going on inside. If relationships are constantly filled with mistrust or abandonment, there may be unhealed wounds broadcasting signals of fear or rejection. If your path feels blocked, stuck, or directionless, perhaps your inner compass has not been aligned with purpose, clarity, or courage. The world doesn't withhold. It simply reflects. This is not judgment. It's precision, a kind of cosmic honesty. But don't mistake this for punishment or moral consequence. This isn't about karma as retribution. It's about symmetry, about resonance. The field of life, ever intelligent, ever aware, arranges itself to respond to what you are vibrating, not what you're pretending, not what you're hoping, but what you are truly feeling and believing underneath it all. That's why trying to manifest a new future while clinging to old stories rarely works. You can't broadcast scarcity and expect abundance. You can't cling to resentment and expect deep connection. The field doesn't respond to your words. It responds to your state. And this is where the game changes. Because when you understand that your life is a reflection of your consciousness, you're no longer a victim. You become a weaver. The fabric of reality begins to feel less random, less hostile, more intimate. You recognize that even the struggles you've faced, the detours, the heartbreaks, the breakdowns, were also mirrors, not punishments, but invitations. Invitations to shift, to heal, to evolve. This is where awareness becomes medicine. When you stop blaming the world for your condition and start examining what internal code is creating your reflection, healing begins. You begin to observe your emotions without identifying with them. You start noticing which thoughts drain you and which ones inspire you. You become curious about what parts of your story are still shaping your now. And slowly, subtly, you begin to reclaim your authorship. Yet even as you begin to take this power back, life will still oscillate. The pendulum will still swing. That is the law of rhythm. But now you no longer panic during the downturn. You recognize the spiral. You remember that nature also breathes this way, that winter is not death but gestation, that silence is not absence but preparation, that every descent is secretly pushing you toward a deeper rise. And it is in this deepening that we arrive at the principle of gender, not in the physical or social sense, but in its energetic form, every force in existence, every act of creation, every movement in consciousness carries within it the essence of both the masculine and feminine. This isn't about bodies or identities, it's about principles. The masculine principle is projective, directive, assertive. It initiates, it defines, it moves. The feminine principle is receptive, intuitive, nurturing. It listens, it gestates, it weaves. Neither is superior. Both are necessary. When you create a new idea, that's the masculine aspect igniting. When you nourish that idea with care, give it time, feel into it deeply, that's the feminine in action. Without one or the other, creation cannot unfold. Action without intuition becomes reckless. Intuition without action becomes inertia. But when both are balanced, when will is married to wisdom, when doing is paired with being, manifestation becomes not only possible, but inevitable. Look at your own life. Where are you leaning too hard in one direction? Are you constantly pushing, doing, forcing outcomes? Perhaps the feminine in you has been silenced. Or maybe you're endlessly dreaming, visioning, imagining, but not grounding anything into form. Perhaps the masculine within is asleep. True power, true creation arises from sacred union. It doesn't push, it flows. It doesn't retreat, it waits. And when it moves with precision. This balance is not something you achieve once. It's a living relationship. You cultivate it daily in how you speak to yourself, in how you make decisions, in how you honor your needs, in how you give and how you receive. The ancient initiates didn't see gender as biology. They saw it as alchemy, as the marriage of heaven and earth within the human vessel. And they knew that the moment those forces harmonized, the initiate became a channel for divine creation. But to arrive at this balance, you must first become aware of your imbalances. You must be willing to confront your overextensions, your denials, your attachments. That requires stillness. That requires truth. And that truth is often uncomfortable, but it is also liberating. Because when you see clearly, you can choose consciously. This is the silent magic of the hermetic path. It doesn't promise you a perfect life. It doesn't offer shortcuts. It invites you into relationship with the laws that govern everything, relationship with your inner world, and ultimately, relationship with the source itself. Not a god up in the sky, but the silent, humming intelligence at the core of all things. The all. The boundless mind in which every form arises, plays, and dissolves. And here's the final insight that ties everything together. These laws don't operate separately. They aren't a checklist. They are a unified field, moving together in harmony, braiding through each other like strands of a single current. Mentalism is the origin, the understanding that everything is born from mind. Vibration is the motion, the endless movement that shapes all things. Correspondence is the mirror, the reflection of inner in outer. Polarity is the scale, the continuum of all qualities. Rhythm is the breath, the expansion and contraction of life. Cause and effect is the justice, the unerring balance of consequence. And gender is the blueprint, the mechanism of creation. To live aligned with these truths is not to escape the world. It is to enter it more fully, to become awake within the dream, to know that while you are human, you are also divine. While you are flawed, you are also infinite. While you are passing through this incarnation, you are connected to something timeless. And this changes how you walk through life. You no longer chase experiences out of emptiness. You no longer seek validation in things that perish. You begin to live from a deeper center, a still point. You begin to listen more than you speak, to feel more than you analyze. You begin to act not out of reaction, but out of alignment. This doesn't make you superior, it makes you responsible. Because once you see clearly, you can't pretend not to. Once you taste truth, illusion loses its flavor. And so you return to the world, not as someone trying to fix it, but as someone embodying what it can become. Not as someone trying to convince others, but as someone radiating coherence. And coherence, even in silence, speaks louder than words. So what does this mean in practical terms? It means choosing awareness, even when it's inconvenient. It means pausing before reacting. It means feeling your emotions without letting them dominate your actions. It means making space for stillness in a world obsessed with noise. It means anchoring yourself in the invisible truth that every thought, every feeling, every choice is shaping something, always. The initiate is not someone who has reached a final destination. The initiate is someone who continues to choose presence, who understands that every moment is an opportunity to come into deeper harmony with the all. And that is the real initiation, not a ceremony, not a robe, not a title, but a life lived in alignment with sacred intelligence. You don't need to understand it all at once. You don't need to master it overnight. You only need to begin with humility, with sincerity, with the quiet willingness to remember what, deep down, you've always known. And now, we arrive at the threshold where theory dissolves and transformation begins. Up until this moment, everything has been preparation, a gathering of fragments of ideas, of ancient echoes awakening in your bones. But what use is revelation if it remains idle? What power lies in forgotten truths unless they are lived, breathed, woven into the fabric of everyday choice? The Kybalion, with all its layered meanings and encoded principles, was never meant to be memorized. It was meant to be embodied. And that embodiment begins here, in this life, in your hands, in your breath, in your silence. Knowledge, no matter how sacred, is inert without movement. It becomes static, brittle, a relic. But when knowledge fuses with experience, when insight is translated into action, it becomes something else entirely. It becomes wisdom. And wisdom is living fire. It reshapes everything it touches, not through destruction, but through realignment. It brings you back to the axis of who you are, stripping away illusions until only essence remains. That's the invitation the Kybalion makes, not to memorize principles, but to synchronize with them, to become an instrument that plays in tune with the cosmos itself. Start with the mind, because that is where everything begins. The law of mentalism is not a suggestion, it is a framework. The world you experience is not random or external. It is the echo of your inner climate. So the question is, what kind of architect are you? What thoughts do you cultivate when no one is watching? What internal scripts loop through your mind like mantras? Are you building reality from a blueprint of fear or a design of trust? Because the structure that surrounds you, the relationships you attract, the moments you repeat, all of it, every single piece, reflects what you've believed in the private sanctuary of your mind. To realign with the all, start by clearing that space. Notice the noise. Notice the inherited beliefs that don't belong to you. Notice the ancient wounds masquerading as logic. Begin to declutter. Not with force, but with observation. Awareness by itself transforms. You do not need to wage war with every negative thought. You only need to see it, to name it, to gently choose another. Every conscious choice is a thread rewoven in the fabric of your reality. Next, recognize the mirror. The law of correspondence teaches that what is above reflects what is below. What is within reflects what is without. The outer world isn't separate. It is a projection of your state, not in a metaphorical sense, but in an energetic one. If you seek peace, become peace. If you long for love, embody love. If you desire truth, walk in truth. The reflection can only change when the source changes, and you are the source. Begin to see life differently. When challenges arise, ask what they are revealing about your current vibration. When blessings appear, notice what inner state made room for them. Life becomes a dialogue, a fluid interaction between your energy and the universe's response. And in this dialogue, you are not just a speaker, you are also the listener. You are the scribe. You are the translator of your own vibration. Then there is the law of vibration itself, the pulse beneath all phenomena. Everything vibrates. Everything. Your cells, your memories, your emotions, your dreams. The faster the frequency, the more fluid the form. The slower the frequency, the denser the reality. And yet both are valid. Light isn't better than shadow. High isn't better than low. But understanding where you stand allows you to move with intention. You are not meant to stay stuck in heavy frequencies. You are meant to rise, not through escape, but through alchemy. Raise your vibration through presence, through gratitude, through stillness, through movement, through conscious speech, through forgiveness, especially of yourself. This is not about bypassing pain. It's about metabolizing it, transmuting it into clarity, into depth, into compassion. When you stop identifying with your suffering and begin observing it, you shift your frequency. When you honor your wounds but no longer make them your identity, you reclaim power. And power in Hermeticism is not dominance, it is alignment. Polarity continues this thread. Every state you experience exists on a continuum. There is no absolute cold or absolute heat, only degrees of the same energy. The same goes for your emotional states. Fear is not the absence of courage. It is courage waiting to be activated. Sadness is not the opposite of joy. It is joy in a compressed form, longing to be acknowledged. When you recognize this, you no longer fight your emotions. You work with them. You move along the scale. You learn the subtle art of transmutation, not by forcing change, but by gently shifting direction. This is what the masters did. They didn't reject their humanity, they refined it. They didn't suppress emotion, they rechanneled it. Anger became clarity, doubt became inquiry, grief became wisdom. They became fluid, and in becoming fluid, they became free. The law of rhythm reveals why this fluidity is so essential. Everything flows, everything rises and falls. The breath, the tide, the heartbeat, the soul. Nothing escapes this rhythm. There will be days of expansion and days of contraction, times of clarity and times of confusion. These cycles are not flaws. They are fractals of universal intelligence. And when you understand them, you stop fearing the descent. You realize that contraction prepares the soil for expansion, that silence sharpens perception, that waiting is not stagnation, it is gestation. When you surrender to the rhythm, life becomes smoother. You stop resisting every shift. You begin to ride the wave instead of drowning in it. This is not passivity. This is skill, to know when to act and when to wait, when to speak and when to listen, when to push and when to let go. This timing, once internalized, is a form of mastery. Cause and effect bring the grounding cord, the chain that binds your past, present, and future. Every word spoken, every decision made, every emotion nurtured. Each one becomes a cause, and from those causes, consequences unfurl. Not always instantly, not always visibly, but always. Nothing is isolated, nothing is lost. Energy doesn't disappear, it returns. And that return is what many call fate. But fate is not fixed. It is a mirror, a response. If you plant anger, you grow discord. If you plant peace, you grow serenity. The universe is neutral. It reflects what you emit. So look at your life. What are you harvesting? What are you reaping? If you don't like the outcome, trace it back. Where did you plant it? And what seed can you choose now to grow something different? This law is not about shame. It's about empowerment. It shows you that every moment is an opportunity to plant something new. You're never too late. The garden of your life is always responding. So begin planting with intention, speak with awareness, think with clarity, act with integrity, and watch as your reality recalibrates in response. And finally, gender, the sacred architecture of creation. Masculine and feminine energies are not about identity. They are about movement. The masculine speaks in clarity, focus, direction. It is the arrow, the spark, the force of initiation. The feminine speaks in curves, in intuition, in receptivity. It is the vessel, the mystery, the soil from which life springs. Neither is whole without the other. Both live within you. To create, you must first receive. To manifest, you must first feel. The feminine listens, dreams, conceives. The masculine enacts, executes, delivers. This is the sacred dance that births worlds, not just physical worlds, but ideas, relationships, projects, destinies. When one dominates, imbalance ensues. Too much masculine energy leads to burnout, rigidity, and disconnection. Too much feminine energy leads to passivity, uncertainty, and stasis. But when they move together, when doing honors being, when intuition informs action, creation becomes graceful. So ask yourself daily, where am I leaning too far? Where have I silenced one voice in favor of the other? Where can I integrate both? This harmony does not arrive all at once. It is cultivated, nurtured, refined through practice. But as it grows, you begin to feel it, that inner sense of alignment, that clarity in confusion, that quiet, unshakable center. That is your true self remembering. When all 7 principles work together, you're no longer moving through life blindly. You're participating, you're collaborating with the intelligence that shapes galaxies and atoms alike. You no longer ask for signs, you become the sign. You no longer search for truth, you radiate it. Your very life becomes an initiation. This is what it means to be an initiate, not someone who knows everything, but someone who listens deeply, someone who walks with eyes open, heart engaged, and mind clear, someone who no longer needs external validation because they have found alignment within, someone who doesn't worship the universe from afar, but communes with it in every breath, every gesture, every moment of presence. And perhaps the most beautiful truth of all is that you don't have to be perfect. The all doesn't require perfection. It requires sincerity, a sincere heart, a willing mind, an open spirit. That's enough. Every small act of awareness reshapes the field. Every pause before reacting, every breath taken in stillness, every choice made from love rather than fear. These are the seeds of transformation. These are the prayers that don't need words. You are the vessel and the flame. You are the student and the teacher. You are the storm and the stillness. All the laws, all the mysteries, all the codes, they live inside you. They always have. The Kybalion didn't come to teach you something new. It came to remind you of something ancient, something eternal, something sacred. And if you've made it this far, if you're still here, still listening, still absorbing, then the path has already opened. You've already begun the journey back to yourself. Not to a version of you shaped by conditioning or fear, but to the truth of what you've always been, a conscious ripple in the ocean of the all, a living vibration, a spark of divine intelligence wrapped in human form. So step forward now, not with urgency, but with grace. Let every moment be a portal. Let every experience be your teacher. Let every challenge be a refinement. You don't need more proof. You don't need more signs. The laws are not waiting for your belief. They are waiting for your alignment. And before this message fades into the noise of the day, remember this: the real journey is not about mastering reality. It's about remembering you were never separate from it to begin with. Everything is connected. Everything is alive. And you are the thread that weave